Want to be a success? Government schools or homeschoolers? You decide. We'll be talking about it next. This is Sue Jeffers for Libertarian Viewpoint. Libertarianism is all about liberty, the exercise of freedom that doesn't impinge on the rights of others. We constantly hear the drum roll of government solutions. This show's purpose is to allow you to see for yourself why non-government solutions are a better alternative. Today's guest is David Watkins. David, this is so exciting because education is the role of the government of the state of Minnesota. And you have an entirely different perspective and option out there. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Susan. We're glad to be here. Minnesota Association of Christian Home Educators is really about parents taking responsibility to train their own children. And so that's really a completely different than the government view of education.
And you're the executive director. How long have you been involved in this?
Well, we've been involved with MACHE for a long time. The organization began in 1983. We got involved just as volunteers with the conference and then began to just do other things with MACHE. Joined the board of directors in 2002, and then we've been involved in that realm as chairman of the board of directors, and then just recently moved to the executive director position that we just implemented here to really help the organization go a step higher than what we felt like it was at that particular point.
So a lot of times you mention the word homeschooling and people are like, oh my gosh, and you hear there's a negative connotation with it, when really I have to tell you, I'm a judge for the homeschool debates.
Yes.
I love it. These kids are so smart, so articulate, and so goal-oriented. They're fabulous, and I'm so excited to have you on to talk about it. But why don't you start shooting holes in some of those preconceived notions about homeschool kids?
Well, I'm glad to do that because the fact that we think we have a great product and the results of home education over the last 20, 25 years have demonstrated that. And that's exciting for us. We always knew we had a great product, but it's the secular media, I suppose, and the folks who want to take a look at the government doing everything for a family. And we're really saying, hey, look, you can turn out a great product, and you'll be proud of that product and won't be ashamed at all. But some of the things that the people will come up with is the area of socialization, for instance.
That has to be the number one that we hear.
It really is.
Oh, the homeschoolers, they don't know how to interact with people.
Yes, and because of that, there's this idea that homeschoolers are some kind of a recluse. We've pulled back in the backwoods. We don't want to let anybody know where we are. And there might be a few that are like that. At the same time, most of them are very mainstream, very focused on the community issues. They're involved in their churches. They're involved in the political realm. They care about the community. And the product itself is just demonstrating academically. It's great. So we're looking at socialization is just not an issue. In fact, we have several children in our family, so we could home educate for a long time, and we did. At the same time, there's kids in the neighborhood, there are community activities, and our children could get along with anybody of any age. They're not locked into a peer group, so the communication is tremendous most of the time. You talk about homeschool speech and debate. There's a good example of that, where parents are saying, we want our children to be able to articulate an idea well, to be able to let the idea win the argument instead of me being emotionally upset. Let truth do its job, and they do a great job at doing that.
The other thing that impressed me so much with the homeschool kids at the debates that I was with was they could engage any age, and the amount of respect, the respect that they showed to each other all age levels, from the youngest of the youngest to the oldest of the oldest, something you don't always see in the public schools.
Yes, well, quite a bit that's the case because of the peer pressure that comes. And we've really discovered over the years, too, that peer pressure, if it's the right kind of a peer, is not a bad thing. But when peer pressure becomes peer dependency, we have a real problem. And that's what we're seeing in the, most of the time, what we call the government schools, that there's a dependency problem. So mom and dad are out of the picture. So you get to the adolescent age, maybe even prior to that at this point in our culture, and the children are not really paying that much attention to what mom and dad have to say because the school principal or the teacher or other students around them are swaying everything that they believe, the things that maybe are dear to the parents. Those are not being taught in the school. In some instances, there are great public schools, and I don't mean to be bashing public schools, but at the same time, they're very limited to what they can do. And again, I think because of the parental involvement, you have children that are turning out to be individuals that are really connected with life itself and how life works.
I think the parental involvement is one of the most important things besides the subject matter. But let's stay focused on parental involvement a little bit. Do you agree?
Yes.
Do you think it's the parental involvement the number one key to success for your child?
Yes, I absolutely. And the public schools would say that too. The private and charter schools would say that the more involved the parent is, the more likely their child is going to be successful and going to be able to do well academically and socially and everything else. If you have a family of disunity, then you have problems, and that child would take the problem at home with them to the school, etc. In fact, we found out that home education is really more about family education than it's about children being educated, because the fact that parents are learning as their children are learning, so it's an exciting opportunity because their interaction with one another really sets it apart from just hi, bye, see you later type of thing. There's interaction that you have to learn how to get along with each other.
What'd you do at school today?
Right.
Nothing. How was school? Good. You know, it's a whole different. I do want to explore the subject matter, but how do parents decide to homeschool? Do they start out on day one and say, I'm never sending my children to those rotten government schools? Or do they reach some point in their educational experience and say, I've had enough? Or do they just, the kids kicked out of high school and they have to find something to do with them, or somewhere in between?
There are all kinds of factors, and that's the thing that makes it interesting, because there are those who are very committed to their children right from birth, and so they're saying we're not going to turn them over to someone else to train them. We're going to teach them values. We're going to teach them the worldview that we want to teach them, and so they know they can do a better job than the institutional school. So they've already come to that conclusion. In fact, we're seeing more and more of those that have already made up their mind. There are second-generation homeschoolers now. My children, for instance, we have 4 of ours are married. We have 13 grandchildren right now, and at this point, they're all being home educated. Now, that's a choice they made, and we gave them obviously the liberty to make that choice, but we're glad they made the choice because I think they could see, too, just the product there, and it can be done. And so because of that, they're committed to their families. So the commitment level is really the key.